loves, it's Elle and welcome back to my channel and happy Foundation Friday. Today we're going to be talking all about why your foundation doesn't last and some of my tried and true professional tips that I use to make all of my clients last as long as absolutely possible. So if you want to know more about that, hit the subscribe button, share this video with somebody you think might like it, and let's do it. All right, so this is going to be a little bit of a talky video, so grab a tea, grab a coffee, do something to occupy your time while you hang out with me. This is, again, there's several questions I get asked, probably the most, and this is one of them. Why doesn't my makeup last very long? Or can you recommend a foundation? That is usually the big thing that, that's going to last all day long. The one problem I have about recommending a foundation that's going to last all day long, because usually foundation drops like Cover FX, Derma Blend, the drops from, number 7, any kind of concentrated drop formula for foundations. But a lot of times when you deal with a long wearing foundation, it has a ton of alcohol in it, okay? So to combat that problem, there's a lot of tips and tricks you can use to use your standard foundation, but make it last as long as possible. There's a couple caveats in here. If you are using skincare, which I hope you all are, you need to let your moisturizer, your serums, and your SPF fully dry down at least 5 minutes before you will start to apply your primer and your foundation. Now this, I did not promise for you to be I did not promise for this to be something that is going to take you, quick seconds in the morning. This is going to be a little bit of a longer application, but the more you do it, the more you practice, the faster it's going to be if this is something that's very important to you. Because very, very honestly, you can't slap on your moisturizer, your SPF right into like a BB cream or foundation and don't set it and expect it to last all day long. It's just not the nature of makeup. So I'm sorry to say that there's not a super quick way to really lock in that makeup. So when we start with our skincare that has fully dried down, again, like I said, about 5 minutes, brush your teeth, go pick out your clothes, do something of that nature. That's what I do when I do this type of makeup, okay? This is also going to be not for, in my opinion, an every single day look, unless you want to take just these tips and apply it just to the foundation application. I am not a big proponent of primer. You know that. I don't wear a primer on an everyday basis, but I also don't need my makeup to last 10, 12, 13, 14 hours. I am very grateful and humbled that I actually have the opportunity to work from home or to work shorter hours, that I don't need the makeup to be super perfect for that long of time. But if you do, primers are going to be an essential part of this step. Pick your favorite primer and a primer that's going to work with your skin type. So if you are oily, reach for a mattifying primer. If you are dry, reach for a hydrating primer. Or if you combination, you can reach for 2 primers if you want to. You've seen that technique done a couple times on my channel, where I call it multi-primering. Is that a word? So today what I'm going to be showing you though is using the TATCHA Silk Canvas. Now please know that this video is all about tips and techniques. It is not about product, okay? So you pick the products that work best for your skin and just use them in these fashions. All right, so I'm going to take a little bit of this TATCHA primer. And this primer is great for all skin types. I would use it really only if you are dehydrated, dry, normal, or combination. If you are oily, you probably need a more mattifying primer. I can use this under my eyes, that's what it's meant for, all over the face, even over the lips. And then you want to pat this bad boy in. Okay, this is important because what it's going to do is it's going to kind of fill in all the fine lines and the pores. So you want to push the product into the skin. All right, so we are ready to rock and roll. Now with primers, for almost 99% of them, you need to let them dry down. So again, this is why this is not something that's going to be a super quick thing, because you got to let your layers dry. Because if you can think of it, if you're going to apply nail polish one level, right, one layer, and then you're going to apply another coat right away on top of the same nail, and then a clear coat on top of it, it's just going to seep all off of the nail. And that's really what happens with the skin as well, okay? So making sure that each layer is effectively dried is important. Now, foundation type during this technique is not super important, okay? It's going to be finding a foundation for the most part, that is a skin-like finish. So not too matte, not too glowy, one that just looks like skin. And they usually have in the description box of the foundation, skin-like, or a second skin, or something of that nature to give you the kind of, you know, note that this is more of a skin-like foundation. So it is one that has a tiny bit of shift to it, but it's not overly glowy and it's not overly matte. If you want to, while your foundation is drying, this is time to color correct in the way that you need it to for your skin. So I'm going to be using the NYX Peach Color Corrector. It comes in a couple different shades. And again, I don't use this all the time, but this is for that flawless makeup application. So what I'm going to do is, you need to make sure your primer is all in at first, is I'm going to tap this peach primer just with my finger over my areas of concern, which for me would be my dark spots. All right, you are up close and personal. So again, and this first step of color correcting is not about completely hiding this right away. It is about gentle layers of color correcting, and then a little bit right here in the corner of my eye. See how much that brightens that up? And again, the amount of product I'm using is also really important. The heavier layers that you use, no matter what it is going to affect the outcome and the wearability of your foundation or your complexion. Also, one thing I didn't talk about earlier was that if you are wearing several layers of skincare, as I do during the day, you need to make sure that, in my opinion, it would be better to wear more layers at night than to wear them during the day. Just because it's going to be a breeding ground of making everything slip and slide unless you have 20-30 minutes to let everything sink in. All right, I know that it's not what we want to hear, but it's the truth. All right, so now our primer is set and ready to go. We've done a little bit of light color correcting. Now, for the next step, what you can do is, I don't typically do this, but it might be something that you want to do. You can take your beauty sponge, no matter what sponge it is. Today, I'm using a beauty blender. I usually use my Real Techniques, but it's dirty. Take a setting spray. You can either spray this all over the face, or you can spray it on your sponge. Depends upon how much you need it to stay. And this is why, and you're gonna press it all over the face, and this is why I say it is not an everyday tip to do this unless you really want to, because most setting sprays that are worth their weight have alcohol in them. That's what makes them a setting spray, okay? So, and putting this much alcohol on your skin every day is not ideal. So if you have oily skin, pick a setting spray that is going to be appropriate for your skin. The new TATCHA, the satin skin mist, is just like their dewy skin mist, but it actually has clay in it. So you kind of shake it up, and you can actually put it on your beauty sponge as well. And the powder in it actually will help mattify the skin. So this is the setting spray I recommend for oilier skin types, okay? All right. Great. Now we're going to go in with our foundation. Today I'm going to be using the Osmosis Performance Wear Satin Foundation. I am in Natural, I think it's called Natural Light. Pick your favorite formula, one that you know works for your skin. And I know this works for my skin. You can actually use the one that I used on my last video, which was the Neutrogena Hydro Boost. That would be fantastic as well. But remember, I have dry skin. If you have oily skin, start out with a brush in your application of your foundation or your beauty sponge. So for me, I have drier skin, so I'm going to take a little bit of my foundation and start to press this all over like you normally would. All right, so we're almost done blending here. I do, however, recommend, if you have color corrected, to use a sponge and apply everything with it so you don't disturb anything that you've put underneath it. Okay, but if you are concerned about your beauty sponge soaking up too much foundation, maybe you're using a really expensive one, feel free to dab it all over the face first, use a brush, and then press it into the skin. Now, this is basically the coverage that I would use if I wanted just a kind of everyday look. So that's kind of where we're going. If you want full coverage, just know that when you put powders on top of it, it is going to give you more coverage. But for me, you know, I like to add a little bit more coverage down in these areas right here. Now you can see that my hyperpigmentation is not covered all the way, but it is definitely diminished, and that's okay with me. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to apply a concealer. Maybelline Instant Age Rewind. I'm just gonna add a little. Okay, now you want to use firmer pressure, not hard pressure, just firmer pressure. So, and no sweeping motions, guys. No, don't pull the Beauty Blender this way. You want to tap, 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 tap this in to the under eye area and make it a second skin. I always go in between here because of the way that my eyes are. I want them to look a little bit more wider set and a little bit lighter in there because I have such lines of darkness on my eyes. Now, of course, you could put this on your forehead, down your nose if you wanted to. I have been known to do that. All right, so now this is where it gets a little scary. Setting, okay? So setting your makeup is going to be very important. If I'm doing this kind of technique, I will take a loose setting powder as well as a finishing setting powder, okay? So I'm just using today the Milk Makeup. This is the Blur and Set powder. It's just a standard, it's a really great setting powder, cruelty-free, non-toxic, all those good things. So this is what I'm doing. I'm tapping a little bit into my cap. I am taking my damp Beauty Blender and I am pushing it into the powder, just a little bit, okay? This is not baking, guys. The reason why, and I start on the outside of my eye, and I'm just using the very lightest pressure ever. So light, okay? Really, really light. And I'm getting that concealer set and in place. Very, very light pressure, no sweeping motions at all, okay? Now, when you use a damp Beauty Blender with the lightest pressure possible, A, you can't see the powder underneath my eyes. My under eye is set, but the dampness of the sponge will take away any tendency to have it be cakey. If you use too much powder, it's gonna be cakey. If you use a brush, for the most part, most of the time, it's going to be too heavy. So using it in this technique and really using a light, gentle pressure and really giving it the time to make this a second layer or a second skin. I'll show you again. Powder. I like to look up while I do this so I can spread my fine lines under my eyes. All right, now that your foundation is on, it's had a second to kind of mull into the skin, okay? I'm going to take a Kleenex. This is an old school makeup tip, okay? Put it into 2 plies and press this bad boy all over your face. Gentle pressure, gentle pressure. Gentle pressure, gentle pressure. All right. Okay, so what that does is that takes any excess moisture out of that foundation and out of your kind of moisturizer so that it doesn't have a chance to break up. This is something that I have used for years and I don't know if I've really ever talked about it on here. So this is a great way to take off, especially if you're oily too. Take off any of that excess oil and make sure that that foundation is nice and set. Great. Let's move on. We're gonna take that same darn powder, put it on our Beauty Blender, and set the rest of the face. This is gonna be enough for the whole face. Tap, 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 and then start to press in. Again, my pressure is super important here, guys. Very, very light. Very, very light. You can use any powder for this, you guys. Coty Air Spun, any loose powder. Again, this is not about the products that I'm using. These are just the ones I know work for me and that I love. Perfect. So now we are good to go. It is set and it is locked in, okay? It feels very weightless. Again, it's all about the techniques. It's about the pressure of everything. Really, really important. Now, if you really want to, you can take another spray of your setting spray. Okay, don't overdo it here. Don't do it like we see on Instagram and stuff. Just a gentle coating or mist of that. Take your beauty blender, press that in all over the face, and this is going to make the powder melt into the skin and make sure that you do not have any dots. Here we are. Okay, so now all you're going to do is you are ready and set to go in with your powder bronzer and your powder blush. That little compact from Elle is so good. Okay, so now we have that done. We're ready to rock and roll with our finishing powder. Now I choose to use the Hourglass. No shocker. I've been using diffuse light more often. I will use ethereal light when I want that extra kick, but it's usually for on-camera gigs. So I'm going to take my diffused light by Hourglass. I am going to take it on a smaller brush. This one is my favorite one to use. It is the Morphe 501 brush. Okay, so you take your brush, go into your finishing powder, load up the brush, and then you're going to gently start to tap this under the eye. Now, when we are using an illuminizing powder like this, it will help to diffuse or an optical illusion of a more flatter surface area. It's also going to be a little brightening. You shouldn't have to use wiping motions here. It's just about letting the brush do what it's supposed to do, and it's in very light tapping motions. So you can actually see between the two eyes. My concealers might be a little bit light today. If you start to do sweeping motions, this will break up your concealer, and all of the work that you have done is really for nothing. So make sure that you are using patting motions and just a little bit of product. Now, you can take your same powder, big fluffy brush, and put it all over the face. And this will give you that kind of, look how pretty that is, that little glow that you're missing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to finish everything up and then I'll wrap this video up. All right, loves, so everything is on. I did nothing else to it except for just finishing up the little things. So if you really want to, this is now another time for you to set the face. Again, very minimally. Do not go in hard. Take your beauty blender or your sponge and gently, with the lightest hand ever, tap that in and just make sure that it is one with your foundation. All right, so that is it. I hope that this helps give you some ideas on how to make your makeup last a little longer. I didn't promise you this would be the fastest way to do it, but if you are super concerned with this and this is something that you really want to work on, try these tips. Let me know how they work for you, and thank you so much for being here. And I do want to say a special shout out to all of the new subscribers that we have. Welcome to the family, and always a big, big hug to my OG Elle squad. I love you all so, so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Lots of love from me to you. Bye, loves.